Hi, this is Caroline Cooper with the next in a series of the A to Z of Hospitality Leadership, and today's F for feedback. Ken Blanchard described feedback as the breakfast of champions, and I have to say feedback is so critical, but how many of us shy away from giving constructive feedback, either because we think it's a waste of time, we just don't think about it, or we think we're not going to get a very positive reaction, particularly if we're feeding back on poor performance. But let me ask you this, wouldn't you rather know if you were doing something wrong, or if what you were doing was either irritating or annoying or letting down your team members? And equally with positive feedback, it's really nice to know that somebody's appreciated it, even if you already know you're doing a good job. So how do we best give feedback? Well, the simplest way is just to adopt a very, very simple model, and that's the AID, A-I-D. AID stands for, first of all, what's the action? What is the specific action that you have either seen or heard somebody perform? So this eliminates any hearsay from what other people have said, anything that you suspect. It's really based on fact. So if you're worried about the feedback that you're going to get is going to be challenged in some way, then if you're feeding back on action, then it's much less likely to get any kind of challenge. The next stage is impact. What impact has their action had? So if it's positive feedback, what are the things that their behaviour or their action has had on the business? How has it helped? Equally, if somebody isn't performing to standard, then what impact is their behaviour having on the business, or maybe on them personally? Maybe it's actually taking them a lot longer to do what they're doing, the way that they're doing it. Maybe they're approaching it in a very long-winded way, or they're getting a type of reaction from a customer or a guest that actually puts them in an awkward position, or it may be having an impact on their team members. The thing about the impact is it needs to be something that's going to really drive home to them. So if they're not really interested in how the business is performing and quite a selfish individual, then let them know what impact that's having on them. Equally, if they're very keen to get on in the business, talk about the impact that that's having on how people perceive them and their opportunities within the business. And finally, D is for development. So what do you want them to do as a result of this feedback? Do you want them to continue doing what they're doing because they're already doing a good job? Is it something that they can build on to make it even better? And if they're not performing well, what do you want them to do differently in future? And we often talk about the praise sandwich, and there are some downsides of the praise sandwich, but one thing you do need to do is to actually leave them on a high, and actually talking through that development, what they're going to do differently, showing your level of support for them will help to leave them on that high. There's also potentially a fourth element of this model, and that's the S, and that's standard. And if you're feeding back on poor performance, it may be important to refer back to that standard before you give the feedback, and reminding people of what your expectations are. Given in a timely manner, so that's as soon as possible after the event, and done in a constructive way, feedback can be highly motivational, but also think about what you want to get out of the feedback. What change do you want to see? What impact do you want that feedback to have? And having that at the back of your mind when you're giving feedback will really help you to adjust your tone and your approach and what you're going to cover in that feedback. So F for feedback, key element of leadership is giving people feedback. Let them know how they're doing.